What is up, fan addicts, fan guy addicts? It's your boy, Josh Fanguy, coming here to you today from quarantine. Um, gonna bring to you guys one of my favorite topics during this crazy time that has everyone just sort of freaking out and not knowing what to do with themselves. I'm a master of quarantine, and one of the reasons for that is that I have a lot of shows that I've watched and like to watch, and yeah, I'm way too much time in my life for that, or I've had too much time in my life for that up to this point. So I feel like I'm a pretty good authority to help y'all out. Now, granted, these shows are based on my tastes, which are definitely not everyone's tastes. But if you like shit that's funny and you like adventure-y, sort of fantasy-oriented stuff, I definitely think you're going to appreciate this quick top 15 list. This is the top 15 shows that you can watch, binge watch during quarantine to pass some time, entertain you, and listen to a good story, because that's what shows all are. They're just stories. And so these are some of my favorite stories that have been told in the form of cinema. So here we go. Without further ado, we're going to get right into the list. The chronological order of the list, it's more groups than it is actual numbers, because I love all of these shows. I just have them kind of tiered out. So we're going to start, and I noticed at the bottom of my list is a lot of feel-good sort of comedy shows, which are always helpful during these times. My number 15 is going to be Chuck. So this is a show a lot of people don't know about, which is one of the reasons I included it on this list. And I do believe it is streamable right now on one of the services. Chuck is about a typical nerdy guy who works at the show's equivalent of like a Geek Squad at like Best Buy. And through events, no spoilers here, he becomes like a secret agent, and like kind of like a James Bond secret agent, and like a kind of a badass one too. So if you like shows where with lovable losers who turn into superheroes, and there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of drama, this is the show you want to watch. Chuck, it's great. It'll definitely. There's a lot of seasons. There's some memorable characters, memorable moments. There's a band called Jeffster on this show that's amazing. And if you haven't seen it and you like that kind of genre, you will definitely enjoy this show. I would highly recommend Chuck. Number 14, Lost Girl. So this is another show that I know is streamable right now. It's definitely a fantasy-based show. It's got a lot of werewolves and vampires and fairies and leprechauns and pretty much all sorts of mythical creatures. It centers around a lot of mythical creatures, and there's like some love triangles with him and her, and her and him, and because obviously both of these people on the screen are in love with her. So there's some action going on there. There is it's just a good show. There's a lot of fantasy elements. Pretty cool storyline. Keeps you gripped for the first few seasons. I don't think I lost my steam. Like, I binged the hell out of this show for the first maybe 3 or 4 seasons, and then it started to slow down for me. But definitely a worthwhile show if you like fantasy. Give it a shot. Number 13, Workaholics. My boys, these guys just did a show on Netflix called Game Over Man, like a movie. So they are becoming more popular. Adam Devine is in hella stuff now. He was just in The Righteous Gemstones, which is a show that's not on this list, but definitely worth a watch. It just came out on HBO. These three are just hilarious. It centers around the daily workings of them at a telemarketing center, and just kind of all the crazy antics they get into in and outside of work. So it's definitely worth a watch, and it'll be funny if you have kind of a irreverent sense of humor. You definitely want to see Workaholics. It is a comedy that I think is a must watch for anyone who likes irreverent sort of comedies. Number 12, Eastbound and Down, right up the same alley. This is definitely for people who are not sensitive and have irreverent sense of comedies. This is centers around Kenny Powers, a retired baseball player. It's sort of centered around the John Rocker sort of thing in real life, where this guy's just a complete piece of shit, and but he's funny, and it's just kind of his life after baseball and trying to get back into baseball. It's a crazy wild ride. I believe Will Ferrell and a few other pretty big wigs were producers on this. So I definitely think it's worth checking out if you haven't seen it. And if you just like funny shit, you'll like Eastbound and Down. So I would definitely give it a shot if you haven't seen it, and even if you have seen it, it's worth rewatching. Not that long. You can watch front to back the whole story in not too long of a time period. Definitely in a day if you really wanted to get at it. So yeah, give it a shot. Moving on to number 10, The Magicians. Now this show I actually recommended to a buddy of mine the other day. He did not like the first episode, I believe. And that's fair. When I recommend this show, I always tell people to give it a few episodes because it does start out very slow. But if you like Harry Potter and you like fantasy magic-based stuff, you should like The Magicians. It has a lot of unique characters, a lot of memorable characters, big moments. I've thoroughly enjoyed this show from front to back thus far. So it's worth a shout if you like fantasy sort of stuff. We're done. Entourage at number 9. Actually, number 10. So Entourage is a show about a famous actor who's the center guy. And his entourage. So he's just coming up as an actor. He's just had his first big role. And now it's the inner workings of like Hollywood and how he's adapting to stardom and how his buddies are kind of rolling with that. Definitely worth a watch. It's an older show, but and it does catch a lot of grief, I think, from some critics for being a little chauvinistic. But I enjoyed it, so I guess par for the course, right? But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this show, and it's got some memorable characters as well. Definitely worth a watch if you're bored and want to show that fits like that. Keeping on the fantasy kick that we just were on before Entourage is Heroes, one of my favorite fantasy-based shows of all time. The first season for sure. Whether you binge the whole series, can't really recommend or not recommend that. I think everything after the first season seriously went downhill with this show. I do think seasons 2, 3, and 4 were okay. And the last season was bleh. But the first season of this show was pure magic. And if you enjoy shows about superheroes and people discovering their powers and what they're about and sort of that, it's definitely worth the watch. It's got some amazing characters and definitely worth the watch. Check out Heroes. Moving on, we're going to go to True Blood. This is a show that I binged when it first came out a lot, and haven't watched it in years, but I do remember that it pretty much held me in for most of it. This is another fantasy-based show about vampires, mostly. There are other creatures that come along. But yeah, it's a story about Suki, who's the main girl in the picture right there, and her relationship to the world of other creatures. It's definitely worth watching. It is mostly centered around vampires. Very cool characters, very cool story, and I think it's got a little something for everyone. So I definitely would recommend True Blood if you haven't seen it. Spartacus. Spartacus is an amazing show. It's action. I would definitely recommend Spartacus. It centers around the story of Spartacus the slave, who led the revolt It's a true historical thing. The show deters from history, obviously, but it mostly takes place, at least the first season, in well, I don't want to get into too much. It's a good show. Terrible tragedy with Andy Whitfield. He had a great special. Side note, very touching, very empowering special on Netflix about the real story of Andy Whitfield, who was battling cancer when he filmed Spartacus, and he found out that he was terminally ill right after the first season came out, right before he realized what a hit it was going to be in a star, and just about the resilience of this guy and the power. But it's a side note. That show is called Be Here Now, and it's a documentary about the ending times of Andy Whitfield, who is the star of Spartacus, which is an amazing show. No, I do not have the corona. Um, Next is going to be Prison Break. This is a show about breaking out of prison. It it's a great show. There's not too much else I could say about it, other than it's about breaking out of prison. There's a lot of good characters. Even my boy Mike Jones, Mike Jones, he has a little guest spot in it. It's just a good show, worth a watch. And if you get a chance to check out Prison Break, give it a look. Now we're getting into the creme de la creme, my top five. Number 5, 24. Could have easily been number 1, to be honest. I love this show. I loved every season of this show. It is the tellings of Special Agent Jack Bauer, who is, just a super badass, played by Kiefer Sutherland. And each show is 1 hour of the day. So the show 24, a full season is 24 episodes, and each one takes place over each hour of the day. And it is an action espionage sort of amazing show on so many levels. Easily could be number 1, maybe should be. Definitely worth the watch. Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is pretty much a cult hit, popular culture phenomenon at this point. So there's not too much I can say about it other than it's Breaking Bad. It's had a bunch of critical acclaim. It's deserving of those accolades, and it's a great show. If you like drug-based crime sort of dramas, this is for you. Dexter, amazing show about a serial killer who hunts serial killers and sort of the battles he wages with himself, and sort of the life of a serial killer who hunts serial killers while working at the police department. If that doesn't sound like enough intrigue for you, I don't know what is. But Michael Hall, I mean, it's just a great show. It's a great show. If you haven't seen Dexter, you will enjoy it, and it is available to watch right now. It's one of them I can rewatch. There's not much else I can say about Dexter other than it's just amazing. Numero dos, Game of Thrones. So this one's a little more niche. I don't think the Game of Thrones is for everyone, but I do think if you enjoy fantasy action-based shows, Game of Thrones for me is the penultimate achievement of that. It's a great book series. It's a great show series if you like that kind of stuff. And if you do and you haven't seen it yet and you're one of those, I don't want to watch Game of Thrones because I'm too cool to watch Game of Thrones because everybody else liked it, well, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're missing the fuck out, and that's your problem. But you should watch it. You shouldn't be too proud to watch it because it is a great show. It has some fantastic characters and a really good story. So, not much else I can say about that. And my number 1 show to binge watch during this time is Lost. The reason I have Lost as number 1, personally, even though it's probably not my favorite of the shows on this list, I think Lost is the most appropriate for everyone. I think Lost can be watched by just about anyone, and anyone will appreciate this show. It is a little older, but it It absolutely has something for everyone. Uh, Everyone will should like Lost. It's a show of mystery, intrigue, characters, action, drama, comedy. It's got something for everyone, and it's enjoyable front to back. It's got a gripping story from front to back. But I do think it's the most appropriate for everyone, and everyone should like Lost. So that's my top 15 list for shows to watch in quarantine. I hope if you haven't seen any of the shows on this list, or there's, I at least brought maybe one or two new shows to your attention that maybe you haven't heard of, and maybe you're bored and you want to check them out. And, I tried to give you a pretty good idea of who would like each kind of show. And if you feel like something's up your alley, check it out. I like to think my opinions on this sort of shit are really good. So check it out, and drop a like or a comment below. Let me know, and let me know if there's anything I forgot maybe. And I wish you guys a healthy, wonderful day. Y'all stay safe out there, and keep on keeping on through this madness. It'll be over soon enough. Much love.